Chris, I hope I'm not cheating on this. I think we just said before, but um, Debbie and I, we have a great marriage, and we've always invested in our marriage, and we believed. Sorry, just for clarification, Debbie's my wife. Okay, just in case there's anything spurious out there. So, that ministry, if you're married, particularly, you can't just substitute ministry, a good ministry, for bad marriage. Ministry, God has given my wife to me as my first responsibility, and me to her. So we believe that ministry comes out of a healthy relationship at home. So that's why my second resource is, and that's not the only one on this, but one that's I just can't put down. We'll revisit from time to time again. It's just the resources and the book by Mark Gungor. And he did a series of seminars, which he then put into a book called "Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage." And I mean, the resources are great. You find them on YouTube. The book he goes deeper in his book, and I've found some things in there so helpful and so true. And Debbie and I, we visited that, we use that, and we use that material when we take marriage seminars together to make sure. And we've come out of that saying, when it comes to any couples, and certainly in ministry, you can have an okay marriage, you can just get by, but I do believe God's heart is He's giving us tools to give us great marriages all the time. Why can't we aspire to that? So we've aspired to that, and that's been a really helpful resource for us.
That's great. I would love to sort of dive into some of the things that that Mark Gungor really talks about. Is there some things that really stood out for you that you've really sort of put into practice and things like that?
Yes. So the fun thing, which is actually quite viral on YouTube now, but just great. He talks about men's brains and women's brains. He does this whole enactment and talks about how things are very different in the way that men and women think. And his little context for that is that men tend to think in a very compartmentalized way. He uses illustration of where men think in little boxes, and when they want to discuss a topic with anybody, they will go to that particular box. They will draw that box out, being very careful not to allow the size to touch any other box. They will open up the lid of that box, discuss what is in that box only. And when they have finished, they put that box back very, very carefully, and it's all done. See, then it goes on. And women's brains are very different. They are like a ball of wire that's connected to everything. And he describes it as the internet superhighway where everything is connected. And he says that's why a woman can remember everything. And if you have an argument, she'll bring up things from years ago that have an impact and a bearing on how she may be feeling in a particular moment. I think that was such a humorous and yet illuminating thought. We are different, and we need to be aware of these things. But the other seminal thing for me that he outlines really well is very countercultural, and he talks about this aspiration that our society has these days. I think fueled by a Tom Cruise film. I'm just trying to remember the name of it now. It says, this idea that finding a partner, the one, is that you complete me. Goes into he says that is not Jewish thinking. It's not biblical thinking. It's actually old Greek. I'm trying to think of the right word here. Greek God thinking. And he says that finding the right one, and if you don't find the right one, then we have to have a right to sort of separate and go. So it's not about being the right one. It's not about finding the right one. It's about being the best person you can be into a relationship. And I read that because they're things we kind of know, but when he began to outline, that is a spear to an aspiration of current pop culture that people need to hear when they're struggling in their relationships. And so they're just, there's loads of things. There are a couple of things that really stick out in my mind.
And I think when Gungor's picking up on that, the difference between the men's brains and women's brains. It's
so good.
We all recognize it as true, don't we? And I was thinking, it made me think about Genesis when God creates the woman, that the helpmate is what's the translation, but it's kind of Ezer Kenegdo is the Hebrew.
Yes. That's right.
And when you dive into that, it's the kind of Kenegdo is that word. It's kind of opposite or same but against. So
yes.
So So
Yes.
same but different, basically. And
Yeah.
how so same in terms of humanity, different in terms of skill set.
Sure.
And you're right, when you look at the, you know, the brains of men and women, how actually what God has designed is for that this how they work together.
Sure.
And so I think, you know, and seems like Gungor really picks up on this thread, and he's recognizing that actually when we appreciate we're wired very, very
Sure.
different, then
Sure enough.
there's a lot of stuff in there that we can actually benefit from. It seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just picking up on that, I mean, things I've learned on my journey, I realized how important early chapters of Genesis are as a blueprint for so many things about our faith. And so we talk about humanity right now. I mean, that thing, the same but opposite. The verse or the few verses before is God is saying, let us make man, humanity, in our image. And then so he makes Adam and then says, it's not good that he's alone. It's not that Adam was lonely. He doesn't say he was lonely. How could he be lonely? You've got God having a conversation every evening with him in the Garden of Eden. That's not the deal. It's the aloneness. He says that's not who we are, talking about the Godhead. And so he puts Adam to sleep and he draws out of Adam Eve. It's not makes another kind of human. He draws out the womanness of Adam and then brings them together and said that partnership completeness more adequately reflects how the Godhead functions. And that really, I found that's really helpful to understanding, you know, why there are differences. And we go on the journey of trying to reconcile those differences for the entire length of a married life. It never changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, in Protestant circles, you know, Protestants have been known for their sort of strong work ethic, and you know, and sometimes that, you know, we've seen throughout history that that's come at the detriment of marriage, and we've
Yeah.
seen examples of that, and which is obviously always sad to read about and to hear about. And I think having this focus on healthy marriages is a really vital part. You know, when you look into scripture, you know, it's about Paul talks about looking after your household as a leader in the church. And so actually like reclaiming those things that actually, and like you said, your first ministry is to your wife. And so yeah, how does that work out for you in a practical sense? How do you make those decisions where, you know, you're busy, you've got lots of things on, but also you've got a marriage and you've got you know, there's a family as well. How do you sort of make those practical decisions that really help you for your marriage to be your primary ministry?
Sure, and I recognise that some things I'll say they'll be personality driven. We are who we are, and in some senses, you know, honest conversations with couples have to work out through their types, their personality. We're Debbie and I are very deferential to one another. We recognise our responsibilities. Debbie's very honouring of what I do, and at the same time, I am deferential that she's my wife and serves and ministers with me. And we have worked things out. I think we worked things out in terms of pressures of time and ministry, which was validated actually by a teaching that I heard at the GLS, the Willow Creek GLS, when it's really caught me now. The guy from Hawaii came in. Gosh, it's caught me. I can't remember his name. I'll just tell you the teacher, and I'm sure Wayne Cordero. Wayne Cordero. And he asks this very question in one of his lectures: how do we get balance? What does balance look like? And he uses the picture of if you like, a seesaw with a fulcrum. And he says we have weight on either end of the seesaw, and we think balance is we stand in the middle, and when we've got equal weight on either side, we can stand and it's balanced. And he says that image is not healthy, because the moment something goes slightly heavier on one side, we panic because there's going to be an imbalance in weight. And he says when that happens, it's not that we can't move. He sort of defines the fulcrum as our heart. He says there are times when to bring balance back, there are times when the fulcrum needs to move in the direction of the weight for a season. And then when, you know, for a season, when that is sorted, the fulcrum moves back towards the center. and we keep balance. And if there's weight on ministry, there are times in my life where Debbie has released me to actually minister, because the demands of ministry in that season requires that. But that's not a permanent state of affairs. I've got to recognize that it's seasonal and put some boundaries in place to come back to the middle. But equally, there are times in my existence, our family life, where our family, particularly when they were younger, required that attention. And so that meant that there are some things as a minister I had to say no to. Said, no, I'm not available for that. I put things in place, or I just don't book up the diary, or we have that conversation, an honest conversation, and Debbie can pull that card and say, I need you here, Nick. And she has that currency because we've had this moving fulcrum understanding sort of between us all the time. I hope that picture makes sense, Chris. But
no,
so
yeah,
I think,
absolutely, yeah.
So I think that's how we, and even today, it's we have similar, we have maybe different pressures in our life. Now we're at different seasons of ministry. We have 3 young grandchildren, and we're involved in their lives, and they live a bit further away than just downstairs or in their bedrooms. We've got to make the effort to do that. We will do that because we have this principle of, we want to invest into our grandchildren. We want to see a healthy reflection of faith in what I think is going to be a challenging world for them. So we'll move the fulcrum either way.